Percent Podcast.
Hey everybody, it's Matthew. Before we get into today's episode of the Matthew and Rizzle Show featuring Katy Arrington, I just wanted to give a shout out to this month's sponsor, who's none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Connie Digital. Everyone listening to the podcast should be familiar with Connie. He's been a guest on here once before. And if you don't know him, he's a legend in the crypto art scene, and he's making waves now with his tokenized music. Just want to make sure that everyone checks out his website at danky.art. That's DANKY.art. And make sure that you sign up for his newsletter. And you can go to conniedigital.com/join to do that. That's CONNIEDIGITAL.com/join. That's it. Make sure you follow Connie Digital, and thank you again for supporting the show. So with that, let's begin today's episode. Okay, we're live. This is Matthew, and I'm back with my dude Rizzle for another special interview on the Matthew and Rizzle podcast. Today, our guest is a really notable crypto artist. If you've been to Whip Asia, you heard her talk. I'm really excited to talk with Katy Arrington all about her beautiful, amazing art, as well as a lot of the life coaching that she's done and maybe a little bit less well known for. And really excited to get into how she's been building out her personal creative brand. So I'm really excited to welcome Katy to the show. Welcome, Katy.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm Katy. And like what Matthew said, I'm a crypto artist and I've been making art for really pretty much all of my life. But then recently, I feel like I found really my voice and my groove. And that was almost around the same time that the crypto community found me. So you guys found me like at a really great time in my art and my creative career. So now I'm in the community. Like you guys are really enjoying my work, which I'm very grateful for. And so that's really what I do is I make art and then I sell it. And then I also coach other artists who really is struggling with their own kind of sense of self and I guess their confidence. And so that's what I also do, which I also really love and is really my life's calling.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if we could kind of go back in time to when you began your creative journey, because reading your bio, it's almost like a tale of two lives. It sounded like you were doing and living a creative life, and then you kind of took a hiatus, and then you came back. So I'm wondering if you could kind of go through that journey that led you to now.
Yeah, sure. So I was somebody that drew. I made art when I was a kid, and I drew in high school and things like that. And so I also had a very on and off relationship in high school, like not really fully feeling confident in my art, but it was something that I did. And I kind of knew that, art was the thing that I wanted to do in my life. But everyone said that you can't make money from it. And so what I decided to do was go in the video game route. I love video games. I played a lot of video games. And I was like, okay, wait, people are getting paid for this. Like you can get a full-time job. This is how you can make money. And so I went to school for it with like a video game background, like a video game focus, and was able to get in the industry, but I was still really feeling like creatively unfulfilled. I was really not enjoying the work, and I was not also enjoying my own work. So even after work, I would try to make my own art for myself, and I just like hated everything. I just really didn't enjoy any of it. I felt like I didn't know who I was. And so it just got to a point where I was like, maybe I wasn't meant to be an artist. Like maybe this, it can't be. Why is it so like anxiety filled? Why do I have so much fear around it? And so then I quit my job. I quit art. I disappeared into like backpacking around the world. And I really thought that like art was over for me. I really was considering other avenues of like careers, like anything. Like I really thought being creative was like just done, like that was donezo. And then I luckily like found life coaching, and that is really what led me back to becoming an artist. I was approaching art in a different way from a different mindset. And that's what really led me here. And led me to creating the art that I really love, that really feels like me. And then I just knew too that like I had to help other people with the same thing.
Hey, how did you find your way into the life coaching aspect of things? Was there like a certain person or project that sort of like, turned you on to that type of thing? Because I feel like that's a very different journey than a lot of the people that we've talked to. So yeah, interested to hear like what sparked your interest in that element. And are there a lot of other people doing that, or are you sort of like the flagship enterprise in that area?
Yeah. Okay. So I kind of fell into it sort of by luck, but not really. I was following this YouTuber or another artist as well. And that's why I'm so grateful for like, things like social media, which is kind of an unpopular opinion, but like I follow this artist and she was very open about her struggles with anxiety and, just like her mental health problems. And she was sharing a lot about the way she was caring for herself and things like that. And one of the podcasts that she shared to her audience, because she cared about her audience, was this podcast called The Life Coach School. And so I decided to go listen to it, and it really like made everything make sense for me as to why I was struggling so much in my art and in my life in general. Like I found it at a really perfect time in my life where I really saw it as like rock bottom. I was like in a really, really unhappy relationship. I was in a really unhappy, like just environment. And so when I found life coaching, it was kind of like, oh, so this is why I keep putting myself in these situations where I'm like not happy and not feeling like I'm doing well. And I kept, I was so confused as to why I kept recreating like situations that I didn't like. And so then when I found that, because of this artist that was very open about her struggles, it just made everything made sense to me. And so then I was kind of like consumed by this. Like I was like, I wanted to study everything to do with mindset. I wanted to study I wanted to figure myself out. So I got really obsessed with like my own brain and my own mind. And I just went on this like journey of like changing it, like really like I wanted a better life so badly, and I wanted a better relationship with myself so badly. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
So who did you find out you were after going through life coaching? Like I feel like, yeah, a lot of times
diving deep.
No, it's all about that self-discovery, and it's paradoxical how you're always who you are, but people tend to not realize that if they don't do all the digging and go through like that hard, challenging work. Yeah. So I'm curious, who are you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so funny, like looking back now, like I used to struggle so much with the question of like, who am I? Because I don't know. I just thought I was fake. I thought I was boring. I thought I didn't have an original bone in my body, right? I just had all of these really not nice thoughts about myself. And when I went on this journey, what I discovered was like, oh, I'm actually more likable than I thought. Like I was just I just really didn't like myself, and just like was like convinced that I was like not a great person. And then going on that journey, I'm like, wait a second, I do have original, thoughts, or I do have a voice. There are things unique about me. I guess that's who I am. And then so now I'm kind of like, I'm just Katy. Like I like this and I like that. This is what I care about. This is what I, don't care for. I feel like it's almost kind of hard to explain, but it's just like, oh, like now I can say like, yeah, this is what I'm about. I care about people. I care about, being authentic and, like being unapologetic about the things that you like and don't like. I hope that answered that question.
No, I feel like that comes across in your style a lot, and I feel like people really identify with that. Do you feel like, have you made a complete departure from your like gamer persona, or like that whole aspect of your career? I know like, maybe physically you did when you quit that job or whatever, but do you incorporate elements of that into your current style, or bring any of that with you?
I would say it is definitely not a departure. Like, games and video games, like I will always have a passion for and I will always love. And I'm definitely not closing that, you know, for the future and things like that. Like if there's a really cool project, I would totally be down to do concept work for a game. And actually, like my struggles with the industry was not the industry's fault at all. That was all me. That was all me and the way I was approaching everything. And so that's stuff that I cleaned up as well, like in this journey of like discovering myself. But yeah, I think that I definitely bring that into my work too, because my work is a lot more illustrative and it's less fine art, right? Like it's pretty, like I am designing characters that I think you could see in video games, like just for fun, just for me. And I feel like I mean, I guess it depends on the video game, right? There's such a range of styles in video games, but at least when I was in school, like we really we studied more like art that was, all I can say is that it's not fine art, right? Like it's not abstract. It's very like representative of the real world, but imaginative and kind of like there's some fantasy elements to it. So, and I love that. Like, I love like when a character looks like a character and like you could imagine a story around them, which is also like things that I learned in my school, about video games. It's like really infusing story. So yeah. And you know, like, I mean, some of my characters are very risque, which I think is not also, like foreign for the video game world. So yeah, I would not say it's a departure. I would say I definitely brought it with me.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if I were to look at your work and try to describe it, there's like definitely this pretty veneer, but below that veneer, there's this like punk quality, this provocative quality. I see a lot of, or feel a lot of like Harley Quinn-esque elements to a lot of the work, which is sort of like video game / movie, which is like super dope. And just highlighting like a super strong, like feminine sexuality, seems to be like a pretty pervasive theme in your work. And I'm curious, obviously we talked about like a lot of the background that goes into your illustrative work. I'm curious, like outside of like that professional background, what I like to think that artists themselves always like leave traces of themselves in the work that they create. And like, if you're to look at your pieces, like what parts of your personality, what parts of Katy are baked into your work?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that punk kind of like goth, like, yeah, that punk kind of thing, that was something that I did not used to include in my work. That was something that I was actually kind of like suppressing or just not really exploring in my work, because it was just like something that I didn't think people liked before. And now, like in the last 2 years, I've been like kind of rediscovering that part of me that really enjoys that like punk kind of attitude and punk fashion. And so I think the reason why I'm so attracted to that, and I'm so attracted to also just the bold colors and stuff that I use, and same with just like the provocative like poses or the provocative like clothes that my characters have, it really is kind of like me being able to really fully unapologetically like express this side of me that I felt like I couldn't in the past, or I didn't know that I had in the past, because I just was so bogged down with all these kind of like self-loathing kind of thoughts. I was really shy, and I wasn't shy because I was shy. I was like, I had really bad like social anxiety and shyness, not because like I just didn't like to talk. It was because like I was so scared of like talking. I was so scared of what people thought of me and all that kind of stuff. And so my art is really like, my art was like the place that I like got to be as loud as I wanted to be, you know? And I got to just like put myself out there no matter what the response was. So I think that's like, and I think my personality too is getting louder, not just my art. And like, it's kind of like, it's like this part of me that wants to come out, right? Like, I think that's what's like inside of my art is is like this me that's like wanting to like be as loud as possible, pretty much.
Katy, do you feel like I assume Katy Arrington is like the government name, right? And so, and unless I'm incorrect, do you feel like going by your like real name is liberating or inhibiting? Or, I would assume there's some like pros and cons to going with that, because when you're talking about like expressing yourself and your like full personality, I mean, I'm clearly like someone who is generally recognized by their stage name, and that's just how I've become to be known. And, I have mixed feelings about putting the government name out there and being like fully exposed like that. And, I'm just genuinely curious how that feels in terms of like, just full on like letting it rip.
Yeah, for sure. So like, I personally find it really empowering to put my full name out there. Like, it's kind of like, whatever, like, I'm not afraid to like put my entire, like, know my name kind of thing. But I don't think it's like, I think it's empowering not because I'm putting my full name out there. I think it's empowering because of my reason. Like, I'm thinking it's empowering. It's kind of the same thing as like a woman could wear like very little clothing and find that empowering. And another woman could wear like, is totally like covered up and find that empowering, right? Like, it just depends on the reason as to why we're doing it. And so I can see how, like, if I were to choose like a stage name and for example, like I love those mascot heads, right? And that kind of keeps us anonymous. And I find that very empowering too, right? So it just depends on like the energy and the reasoning behind it. I could totally choose a stage name and think that that's like really empowering as well, and that's cool as hell, and that's like really liberating. I think it just depends on the way we're approaching it, right? The way we're thinking about it.
And I kind of want to go back to a word that's come up a few times. I know the word anxiety has popped up in your conversations about your creative journey, the struggles that you had to get over regarding anxiety. And I know, like, especially anyone that is being publicly creative, I think I've heard Jerry Saltz talk about, specifically within the artist context, artists, when they're sharing their work, they're dancing naked, right? It can be a very terrifying exercise in putting your work out there publicly. And I know that anxiety of sharing and letting something go that you've been working on can be extremely anxiety inducing. I know you were able to kind of overcome that, but in your life coaching with other artists, I'm sure everyone has their own struggles with the anxiety. Like, how do you coach other artists through their own anxieties, whether that comes from like anxiety over sharing or making their work public or whatever other sources of anxiety they have? How do you help each individual artist that comes to you as a life coach?
I would say that like there's kind of like I have a program that I take them through. And one of the main things in the beginning is really about like learning how to like feel the anxiety and then do it anyway. And the more that you do it, like the more that you put yourself out there, the more that you prove to your brain and you prove to the anxiety that you don't actually die, right? Like, the only reason we're experiencing so much anxiety is because our brain literally thinks that we're about to die if we do this thing, right? Because like if we, it makes sense because like 3 million years ago or however long, when we were in tribes, if we got like rejected by the tribe, right, that literally meant death. And so it's like, it's just a brain function that hasn't really caught up to the way that like our life is now, where like if we do get socially rejected, we don't actually die. And so it's about training the brain to show that like there's nothing actually that is going to kill us. And so if we listen to the anxiety and we don't honor our word to put ourselves out there, like to share, to show up, then we end up feeding the anxiety and we end up making it bigger. Right. And so if we make a commitment and we make a promise to ourselves that we're going to like make this thing and then we're going to share it, and then we do it, we make the anxiety less powerful. So it's really about just understanding the brain and how it works, and then being willing to feel, right, the fear, being willing to have it and leaning into that discomfort and then doing it anyway. And then that is the that is really how you get to that place where and because then you just keep proving that you're okay, right? That you're totally fine. And it lessens, it quiets, like that part of the brain like gets quieter and quieter. And especially as you keep showing up and keep sharing, you find not only are you okay, but like you also usually get a very good response. Like people love it when people are honest, right? And when people are vulnerable with their anxieties and all that stuff. And then you start to see that like, this is actually it's actually a good thing. And then so you just get less and less anxious.
Do you see that with like a lot of artists, or like how have you, like, do you proactively reach out to people who you can see are struggling with this thing? Or like, now that people know that you're a life coach in this area, do people sort of reach out to you, or how does that work?
Yeah. No, I don't reach out to people because in order to coach somebody and in order to create change, like the person, the client needs to want to change. Right? Like there's never any point in coaching somebody if they don't actually want to create that change. So it's always like, I'll like my side, or like my responsibility is just to like let as many people know as possible that I'm here to help. So I don't reach out to people one-on-one, but in my stories and I am in my YouTube channel and things like that, that's where I'm just like blasting it out. Like, hey, I can help. Right. And if you want the help, come find me.
I feel like you have, I mean, as any solid brand will, multiple channels that they utilize in different ways, right? It sounds like your YouTube channel is definitely more about, well, I mean, just what you just described, talking about that life coaching aspect potentially a little bit more. I'm curious, like what are the channels that you rely on most, and how do you think about the channel management for the different purposes? Obviously you have the art, creating, selling side, and then the life coaching side, which can be related, but obviously are distinct. So I'm curious how you manage those separately.
Yeah. I think I created more like confusion for myself when I was trying to separate them as two different things. They meld so much, like, you know, my coaching and my art, they're not separate, even though they are two separate businesses, like in my taxes. Right. But like when I'm marketing, or when I'm letting people know about what I do and how I can help, versus when I'm sharing my work, it's all in the same channels. Like, so I focus on Instagram and Twitter and YouTube. Those are my three like places that I show up. And I just focus, like, so for example, with my stories on Instagram, that's where I'm going to like make offers for my coaching. And then the feed is mainly for my art. So it's kind of like I'm in the same platform in all of those places, but like, I just, you know, I like pick different parts of each platform on like where is like the art going to be shared and where's the coaching going to be shared. But they tend to be in the same place. Like, for example, with my YouTube videos, I'm sharing a time lapse of me completing an artwork, and then the voiceover is about coaching, right? So they kind of go hand in hand. Like the more I've just kind of meld them together, the easier it's been for my own like organization.
All right, Katy, I feel like I end up being cornered asking this question, but it seems relevant every time we have one of these podcasts. I'm like, you got a lot of wheels in motion and like, you know, balls in the air in terms of like your art and your life coaching thing. Like a few years down the line, do you see yourself more in like the art realm, in more of like the life coaching realm, some sort of like hybrid type of thing that you've got going on right now? Or like, you know, based on what you've got going on right now, where do you see yourself taking this, like moving forward?
Yeah, no, it's going to forever be like a hybrid thing. It's like when I found life coaching and it really helped me. It was one of those things where I was just like, oh, this is what I'm meant to do, like in the world. Like this is like, this is what I was born to do. This is what I was put on this planet to do. And then art is like that vehicle for me to be like fully myself. So it's like limbs to me. Like there's no way that either of them is like less important. They're both they're so important to me. And the way I see it is like the more success I have as an artist, the more that I can teach my clients and the better coach that I am as well. So I see them as really kind of like informing each other a lot, right? So like the more I grow as an artist, the more I grow as a coach
And
as
then
well.
like on the artist side, I always love to see how artists and hear about how artists think about editioning, whether they put out limited edition, one of one, like super rare works, or they have larger edition sets. And you have obviously had a mix of that on Maker's Place. I'm curious, like, how do you think about how you edition the work? Like, is it something that you think about after you create a specific piece? And then with the edition size, like, what are the major considerations and factors that go into determining like what the edition size is?
Yeah, so I kind of have an idea or like when I have the painting idea in my head and I'm about to make it, I already kind of have an idea of like what number of editions it's going to be. And the way I think about it is, I mean, I love having a range. Like right now, I think I have like in my shop, I have like a range of like something has like 100 editions all the way to like 1, right? And then there's like 35 and then like 20 and 5 and 10 in between and stuff. I like just having that range for all kinds of collectors. But what I have done, really what I've done is just kind of like going with my gut and going with what I think like could work, what feels good for this artwork. Like it's like per artwork. And then you know, following that gut and then being willing to learn pretty much. Like, does that seem like that work? Does that seem like that's people like that, like the way that's set up? But I think mainly it's just that I like to have that range of a piece of artwork also that already, you know, it's sold out. And so then I have like I don't really have any artworks in like maybe like the mid 30s range or something like that, right? Of editions. Then I want to find something that can fill that so that I have like a good range for everyone.
And then we were talking about this, I think, before we started recording. And I mean, when I like to think of editions, obviously I'm not an artist, so I only think about it from the collector's perspective. And I like to see, I mean, I think it's pretty cool that artists are able to, they kind of pull the levers of editioning to build out their collector base or consolidate it. I think that's a really interesting kind of lever that artists have at their disposal. But then we were talking about potentially, or you creating a wearable series. And I'm wondering, like, how do the wearables fit into your art? Are you thinking of that as a way to kind of reinforce the collector base? Is it something totally separate from the art? I know a few other artists out there use that as like a nice reward for their collector base. I'm curious how you're thinking about it. And hopefully whenever Ben Nolan and crew get their act together and fix the wearable contract on their end or whatever, curious what you're thinking about that with your wearables.
Yeah. So, okay, like a lot of my decisions for my art is really like, is this fun? Would this be fun to do? Would this be fun for other people? So it wasn't really like this is a way for me to like grow my collector base or anything like that. Or I'm just thinking about like, you know, would this be fun to work on? And then would it be fun for people to like collect and buy and wear or something like that? And so I initially wanted it to be released with the most recent painting that I released, the CryptoKitties Harem. And I thought it would just be like a fun thing, right? Because my original idea was that it was going to be like this one-on-one, you know, a one of a kind. And so it was like just for the whales, right? But I thought then like, it would be really fun to release these like wearables that would be cheaper. So then smaller size like collectors, they would have something fun to collect too when this painting, you know, this bigger, maybe like higher end painting kind of comes out. But you know, that we changed that. And so now I'm just waiting for it to come out. I just think it'd be really cool to see a bunch of people like, I think the wearables I designed would be really fun to see people wear. And I think people would like it too. It's just kind of like these, you know, you could probably guess like based on like the CryptoKitties series, like what they look like. I think seeing a bunch of people in crypto voxels, I think could be really fun. So that's why I made it. That's all.
Well, I know Matthew just mentioned that you're on Maker's Place, and I just sort of assumed because I see you everywhere that you were everywhere. Are you like mostly local on Maker's Place, or are you like cross-platform, or where does most of your stuff live these days?
Yeah, it's mainly on Maker's Place. So, or it's only actually on Maker's Place, and they're who I started with. They're the ones that like recruited me to their site. I am like looking into other platforms. So far, I haven't really felt like the need to cross platform, right? Like it's again, like all of my decisions are really just like, would it be fun? Like, is this like, if I were just to go on like known origin, I think, and super rare and things like that, just for the sake of it, that's not like a good enough reason for me. I am interested in Rarible because I like the idea of like Rarible being like this, like I would sell like more like smaller, maybe even like just like cheaper kind of, lower end art, but not lower end as bad, but it's just like
shots fired.
No.
Lower price point.
No, don't take it like that. Yeah, lower price.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's like there's a from what I can tell on Rarible, there's a vibe to it where it's like you're collecting more like not trinkets. Oh my god, I hope I'm not offending anyone. That's not what I'm trying to say. Like collectible. Oh no!
I'll collect your trinkets on Rarible if you want to like.
I think it would be
unload a roll of trinkets. Yeah.
It just feels like there's a different vibe, I guess. Like Maker's Place and Rarible, whereas like known origin and maybe super rare and Maker's Place, to me, there's not a different enough. At least I don't know yet. I haven't done enough of that research. That's why I'm not like super crazy about like, okay, I need to get on every platform. It's more like, what would be really fun? Like I have these ideas right now for Rarible, like where instead of selling like paintings, I want to sell like sticker. Like, I don't know, this is crazy. I don't know if it'll work, but like the idea of like selling like mini paintings and like stickers kind of. So like smaller paintings, more like, I guess the difference is like almost like collecting like Pokemon cards, right? Like that's the way I see it. And I think that would be kind of fun.
You don't have to walk it back. We'll just call it trinkets and it's all good and we'll collect them. And I think people will think it's dope. Honestly, I feel very honored because I identify with your attitude because I feel like I only want to do things that are like cool and fun to me. So I feel like you coming on this podcast like makes me feel good because I feel like you probably wouldn't do something like this unless you thought it was going to be like cool and fun. So that to me is like a badge of honor. One thing we really like to do, and I'm not trying to hit you with this like too early if Matthew's got a couple other questions, but I am genuinely curious as to what sort of things you collect on the side in terms of like other artists or like games you are interested in, or like, if we were to like pop open your crypto wallet, like what's going on in there?
Yeah, I don't have a lot yet. I'm just starting to like collect things. I've just been getting like free stuff from people so far, but I bought something from Van's Design the other day, and I bought something from her Twitter handle is Squirterer. If you guys...
Oh, Squirterer. Yeah, I collected her. I've collected a bunch of her stuff, actually.
And it's really fun. Like it's really fun to collect this stuff. So I'm starting in Rarible just because, like I said, it feels to me, I don't know why, but it feels like I'm collecting like Pokemon cards. And so like, it feels a little bit more like a smaller barrier of entry versus like super rare or something like that, right? Or Maker's Place. And so I'm starting there, and I'm starting to collect these artworks there, and then we'll see like where I go next. I'm kind of just like, baby steps. That's it. Like I was going to say baby feet in the water, like dipping our toes in the water. That's what I meant as well. I was trying to mix those two. Anyway, yeah. So I'm just getting my toes wet on collecting my own like crypto art.
That's cool. I mean, thinking about the different platforms and their strengths and like unique differences, I think is a really important exercise, not just for artists, but collectors too. And I totally get the same vibe from Rarible as you. I wouldn't say trinkets. I would just say that's where a lot of artists are doing more experimentation with larger, with additions, right? And it's almost like a ground to reward folks that are more curious to experiment along with them, like experiment on a collecting side, whereas they're experimenting on the creative side. And like the Rarity token just really helps incentivize both sides, at least for now. It makes both sides more willing, since it rewards both sides for that sort of action, versus like super rare, which is like at 1.7 ETH average per work sold, which is, I mean, getting pricey for a lot of folks. Like has already been pricey and feels like a little bit more exclusive. And then Nifty Gateway is like a whole other kind of like planet almost within crypto. It's almost not even connected to like the NFT land, seeing as like they have such a different collector base, which adds like a whole nother wrinkle in how people think about where they drop on. And then Async doing their craziness with their layers and stuff like that. But but almost to go into like a whole different direction. And this is like a question I've had in my mind for a while, since I found out that you're like Indonesia based, is like, what is the connection with you and Indonesia? Like, is there any aspect of Indonesia reflected in your work? I'm curious, like how, like the whole Indonesia connection, because I see that like nowhere actually in the work or your bio or story outside of the fact that you're based.
Yeah, for sure. So the connection I have is that my mom is Indonesian, and I'm half Indonesian, half American, like ethnicity wise. And so I was born and raised here, and then I moved to the States for college. So for art school and things like that. So I would not say that Indonesia is very much a part in my art. My first language was Indonesian. I've always kind of struggled with this. Like, I didn't feel like I was really Indonesian, and then I didn't feel like I was really American either. So it's like, I feel like I'm kind of like in limbo of like who I am, I guess. And when it comes to like, culture wise. And so I think I've mentioned this before in other interviews, but I guess then I almost kind of like don't identify as like from Indonesia or from America. I kind of just see myself as like a child of the internet kind of thing. And so I feel like I'm so influenced by like everything, like I'm one of my favorite things in the world is Japanese culture, which has which is not Indonesian or American. So I feel like I don't feel like I'm from anywhere. I feel like I'm from everything that was like on the internet, which like I was more exposed to, growing up and stuff, like video games, like memes, YouTube, all that stuff. And less like, I don't feel like particularly, patriotic about Indonesia or America. And I honestly think like not very long, we're all just going to like meld, like eventually someone's going to be from Earth and another person's going to be from the moon or Mars. And so, yeah, that's the way I kind of see it.
Child of the internet, man. I really love that phrase.
Love that. I mean, I feel like that's the mindset of the future. I mean, this is getting a little personal, but I mean, me being away from the States as well for like 13 years now. I don't really feel particularly from the States anymore. Obviously I'm not from Korea. So it's like, I've always been in that same place. I don't use child of the internet. I was like student of the world. It's kind of like how I like to think of myself, not from anywhere, but of everywhere, or like connected everywhere. And I feel like, especially within NFT land and in crypto, it's like, that's the mindset that is like, it helps you take full advantage of everything and everyone that is around you. And it's just, I love that. I personally love it.
Yeah, for sure. It's like taking in all the resources of the whole world, right? Rather than from one place. So yeah, I agree.
That's cool. Well, we like to keep the podcasts on the shorter end. I feel like we covered a lot of ground though, but I just want to make sure, and I want to give you the floor to give your shout outs and shoot your shots if you have anything left to talk about before we wrap up, and let folks know where they should be following you at and where they should be paying attention to.
Sure. Okay. Can I quickly also though talk about like two things I wanted to mention before the shout outs and stuff like that? Like, okay. Do it. So before the show, we talked a little bit about branding, and I wanted to just mention that like, I think a lot of people would say that I have a brand, right? I have a distinctive style and things like that. And I think, and I've had people ask me like, how did you create that? Like, and I think coming from a place of like, oh, this is something that I need to like almost think about, or like, calculate or strategize like what my brand is, when I've never done that. It's always been like really like choosing things that I just like, things that I gravitate to, and really getting to know like my tastes. And it's like, so the way I see it is that everyone already has a brand. And as soon as people like, so for example, when I was really struggling with my art, it was because I was really believing, I really thought I didn't have a voice. I thought I didn't have a style. I thought I wasn't unique. And so when I started to question that and just started thinking like, what if I was though? If I was unique, if I already had a really distinct style, like what would that be? And I like went to town really answering that for myself. Like, what is like really like unique about me, like, or like what are the things that I like, and that is like that makes me unique, right? Like the combination of things that I like, that is not what somebody else likes, that is like my brand. And so I guess the way what I want to mention is that like it's not about like strategizing that, it's really just about like already believing that you have a brand. And so when you believe that, then you kind of push that further, like naturally, like it naturally comes out if you already believe that you have one. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense.
Dude, it does, but that's a very difficult like thing for people to internalize, which I'm sure you've like encountered in your life coaching thing. It's like, you know, a lot of people over try with their brand, and I feel like that's probably why that's worked for you, is because you're like, almost because you're not trying to create a brand, you're just doing you, which has created a brand in itself because it's authentic and people can relate to it. Right? If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You described it better than I did. So yeah, that's exactly the kind of stuff that we also work on with coaching, is really letting yourself be like authentically you doing you. And then your brand comes out naturally, and it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel weird. It just feels like, yeah, this is who I am, kind of thing. The second thing I wanted to mention was like, please, dear Lord, I was not putting down Rarible.
Dude, sell your trinkets. I want trinkets. I want Katy Arrington trinkets on Rarible tomorrow.
Because I have seen some expensive ass shit on Rarible as well.
Don't make them too expensive.
I love things like blind boxes. Like Tokidoki is my favorite brand. Like I love that more than any high end, like quote unquote high end stuff. So guys, I am not offending Rarible. Okay, yeah, that's the two things.
Solid walk back.
I mean, yeah, we're just joking with you and joshing with you about Rarible. It's always, whenever we want to like express things like that, it's so funny how like what the first words come out are, and it's always just like an experiment in expression when we're kind of like verbalizing and thinking about this stuff. But I know you're on Twitter. We talked about your Instagram. Are there any other places that you want folks to follow and pay attention to what you're doing?
No, it's just my YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. That's the only places, and then my maker's place, and then eventually. Maybe Rarible.
There we go. Well, we'll make sure we include all those links in the show notes. But it was awesome to talk with you. I had a lot of fun.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Totally. So hope you keep on creating, and thank you again.
Thanks, Katy.
Thank you.
Hey again, this is Matthew. Thank you all for listening to this week's episode. And just want to give one more shout out to this month's sponsor, Connie Digital. Make sure that you follow him and go check out his latest updates at danky.art. And definitely, if you're not already signed up, make sure you join his email newsletter by going to conniedigital.com/join and filling in your email address and ETH address. That's conniedigital.com/join to join Connie Digital's email newsletter. Thank you all, and see you on the next episode.
Podcast. Rizzle. Send podcast. Send podcast. Rizzle. Send podcast.